everybody. Welcome back to the Mindful of You podcast. This is episode 82, Lessons from If. So, I wouldn't be surprised if many people haven't seen this movie. You know, it's not a Disney movie. It's not like, you know, doing crazy numbers. You can't watch it on Disney Plus. And so I wouldn't be surprised if many people haven't seen this movie, but it's called If. If stands for imaginary friend. And it's a great movie. It has John Krasinski, Ryan Reynolds, Mia Rudolph. Who else? I think Blake Lively voices someone. There's a lot of really wonderful actors in this movie. What I really liked about this movie is they had some really, really solid storytelling. I felt like it felt like a passion project by like John Krasinski and Ryan Reynolds. And I think it was. I think that's really what it was. And whenever you've got like a passion project, you're going to have something really good, because a lot of things coming out now have very little to do with passion and a lot more to do with money. And so it didn't feel like a movie that was like its goal was to make money. Obviously, they needed to make money because they spent a bunch of money on the movie. And so, you know, they had big names. Like there was definitely money goals involved, I'm sure. But that didn't feel like its primary purpose. It felt like they wanted to tell a good story, which I loved. And so it was a great movie. I'm not going to try and summarize the whole movie because it's been a while since I watched it. And so I don't want to do it an injustice. And so I'm going to just go over the lessons I learned from it, and I'll try and reference the parts of the movie I'm referring to. If you haven't seen this movie, hopefully you can still follow. The lessons are going to, I think, are still really great. So my first lesson is life isn't easy or fair, even to the innocent. So our main character in this movie, she's a sweet young girl. I think she's like 12 or 13, maybe even younger. Maybe she's like 10. But her, it kind of goes through, her mom passed away, and then now her dad is in the hospital, needing a surgery done. And it seems like a pretty life-threatening situation. It's so sad because, like, you know, this young girl, it's just so sweet. She didn't do anything to deserve like such a hard lot. She has very loving parents, and it is, you know, it sometimes is like, even if it's jarring, it's a good reminder to remember like really hard things are happening, you know, whether to you or to someone you love, even when they don't deserve it. I don't think anyone deserves it. I think that's a really harsh thing to say, that anyone would deserve the pain that they're given. But I think it's just good to remember that even the best of people, sometimes even especially the best of people, have to go through really hard things sometimes, even kids. And so just remember, life isn't easy or fair. I know that's like a really like sad lesson. It's not like a, oh yeah, I feel so much better lesson, but it's true. My next lesson is difficulty and trial can cause us to grow up too quickly. So another one that doesn't make us feel too good. But our main character in this movie, she is really resistant to her dad's like silly antics. You know, she puts up with it for a little bit, but basically John Krasinski's character, her father, is trying to, you know, make her laugh, make her feel better, even though he's in the hospital, not doing too well. She reacts okay to it, but, you know, she ends up kind of getting mad. Like, I'm not a little kid, you know, like, you don't have to treat me like this. Like, life sucks. Life is bad. Like I kind of said in my, in my first lesson. It's really sad because I think that happens a lot. You know, we see like really mature young people, and I think sometimes that comes from like going through really hard things. And it makes us kind of grow up a little bit too fast. And so try and like be kind to your inner child, so to speak, especially if you've had a hard upbringing or anything like that, and try to remember that, you know, despite my lesson number 1, while life isn't easy or fair, it can also be wonderful. You can also laugh. You can also have joy. You can be silly. You can have fun. And that's the parts of life that make it worth it. Number 3, Adults don't stop needing support and love, as our insecurity and fear doesn't just exist in childhood. So my favorite scene of the movie that had me tearing up, one of the imaginary friends, so basically they're trying to reconnect the imaginary friends at one point in the movie. They're trying to reconnect them with the like kids that they were imaginary friends with when the kids were young. So now they're adults, and so they're trying to get them connected with them again. And so they show a scene where there's youngish to middle-aged guy at his workplace. He has to give a big presentation, and he's so scared, and he's not being nice to himself, and it's so sad. And like he's like looking at himself in the mirror, just really hating himself, and he's really not feeling good about his presentation, about who he is. And so he ends up being able to kind of feel the presence of his imaginary friend through some of the stuff he does, and it helps him calm down, which I think is really sweet. Even though I never had an imaginary friend, and I don't really relate to that part of the story, it just made me remember, like, adults are kids. Like, I know that sounds funny, but like, we're all kind of going through the same stuff. We feel insecure sometimes. We feel like we don't know what we're doing, and we feel overwhelmed and scared, and we need that kind of support. And so it's hard to remember that you don't have to have it all figured out, but you don't. And you need that support and that love sometimes, if not from an imaginary friend, from real life friends, from your parents, from whoever. Hopefully you have somebody who can remind you that you're going to be okay and that you're awesome. If you don't, here's me reminding you that you're going to be okay and you're awesome. Number 4, we all want to feel needed. So part of the struggle of this movie is like the imaginary friends like don't feel needed anymore because their kids grew up. And so I think it's really important that we all have someone who needs us, or at least really wants us, and like sometimes that can feel like a burden and scary too, but it's also really nice to be needed. Like I honestly love having a pet because I feel like she needs me and she loves me, and so it's really fun to have her. I also feel with my husband that we, give certain things to each other that would be really hard to do life without now that we've become so accustomed to them. Even with my parents and my siblings, it's nice to feel like I'm contributing something that they really appreciate or that they needed. You don't want to be so reliant on that like you're not okay unless you feel like you're, giving yourself to other people. There's always a toxic side to basically everything I tell you guys if you take it too far. I do think it's part of the reason I want to be a therapist too. I don't want my clients to need me like in a like trauma bond freaky sort of way, but I do want to feel like I'm contributing something, not just for my own sake, but hopefully for their sake, that I can be whoever they need. Okay. This is my last lesson. Despite the imperfections of our loved ones and the frustration we can feel towards them, when push comes to shove, we just love them. I would say I have a little bit of a short fuse sometimes. I'm not always the most patient person, and so I sometimes lose patience with my loved ones, and I get frustrated. I'm like, oh, why are they like this with my friends, with whoever? And I go through bouts of being frustrated with people. But like, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but whenever something like hard happens, or, you get humbled or something happens, you just want those people that you love. You just want them to be there to love you. You want to love them. And it can feel really good, to just let go of all the things that you were like, this bugs me. Ugh, I'm so frustrated. And to just let it go and just love who you love. We're all imperfect, like really imperfect too. Like it's not just like a little bit. And life is going to be really miserable if we can't let some things go. And so remember, it's okay to just love your people. And you're going to get mad with them sometimes, and that's totally fine. But they're your people, and hopefully you can remember you just love them. This lesson came from the part of the movie where, you know, the main character wasn't mad at her dad or anything. But, you know, she had her little moment where she's like, I'm not a little kid. But then at the end towards the end of the movie, she just hugs him and she wants to be a little kid again. She kind of rediscovers that she is still a kid. And her just hugging him and holding him just made me cry, because I was like, you know, relationships are what matter. Like, the people matter. And we can get so hung up on those little things where we can remember we just love them, you know. And I could feel that love, even though they were just pretending it's a movie, but I could feel that love in their hug. And so it was just such a great reminder for me. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I encourage you to check out this movie. It's a tearjerker, but it's great. And have an amazing week. Bye-bye.